So I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. So tell
Sure.
us how you grew up. I'm sure you grew up Muslim. Take us from there.
Yeah, well, I was born a Muslim, technically speaking, and I grew up almost schizophrenic, which is, I mean no offense by this term, jumping back and forth between my mom coming into the room to say prayers at night, hands folded, kneeling by the bed as she was an evangelical, and my father coming in at night, lying down as he was a Muslim. He was born and raised in Jerusalem. His father, Farid Imam, was the founded the first local travel agency in the Holy Land. He actually was one of the brokers of the Dead Sea Scrolls as well, these ancient documents that held the sacred scriptures on them, amongst other things. His father was the Imam of Al-Aqsa Mosque, so that he was the prayer leader at the third most holy site in the world for Muslims. And his father was the Mufti of Jerusalem. So for a Mufti, it's a legal expert within Islam. Think of a mix between a Catholic bishop and a civic judge,
Hmm.
merged into one. So we come from a pretty well-known Muslim family, but there
And
was some.
you mentioned Imam, and that's your last name. So what's the deal there?
It is. It's actually a bit of a funny story. So my great uncle was Mufti Husseini. He was the one that Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, claimed gave Hitler the idea for the final solution, the extermination of the Jews. It's not true. Don't worry. Uh, but we did. But it was true that he was pro-Nazi, and so our family changed our name from Husseini to Imam,
Hmm.
mirroring what our historic spiritual function was in the family, to get a little bit of a distance from him. So that's the story.
Okay.
And but just as the Catholic Church has seen a number of scandals in the last number of years bubble up and come to the surface, so the Muslim community saw some of that as well. And my grandfather was a bit disenchanted by that. My father was certainly disenchanted by that. And particularly as my grandfather was studying the Christian holy places and leading tours there, he began to read the New Testament frequently. He
Hmm.
went to a New Testament Bible college for archaeology. He didn't want his assets divided up, but according to Sharia law at the end of his life. And he told my father to marry a Christian. And so there was this slow transition away from this faith of his fathers that he began. And my father likewise was, but even more so, rather disenchanted. And so when he met my mother, who moved to Jerusalem for a little while as a study abroad student from Michigan State University, and met her and married her and moved back to the States, it was a slow process of liberalizing for him. And so even though he taught me the Quran growing up and taught me how to pray here and there, it was he would times express his doubts as well. And so I was raised constantly thinking between these two faiths. He
Hmm.
didn't want me to be a Christian. He didn't want me to learn the faith. He didn't know that my mother was doing this at first,
Hmm.
praying with me, and so there was this all in the home in my early
Yeah, what
years.
a strange way to grow up because I imagine a lot of people in America have the experience of two different denominations within the home, maybe a Catholic and a
Mm.
Protestant. And I wonder how they try to reconcile that, maybe by thinking, well, we're really kind of both the same. And so it's not that much difference. And so there's not much kind of cognitive dissonance. But how did you deal with that?
Well, I was 4 years old. I remember it really clearly when I realized that my parents believed different things. We prayed in different ways, and
Hmm.
they said things that were strange. But it was a conversation around the dinner table where my father finally found out that my mom was saying some things to me about Jesus and the good news. And he went up in a ball of flames and was very angry about this. And I kind of realized then that I had a long journey before me. He was kind of constantly nagging at me, which one's right, the faith of my father or the faith of my mother, for up until I was about 9 years old or so. And at nine, I realized I just was too young to deal with these questions. So I kind of put it off. I was going to classical school at the time. I thought maybe the Romans got it right, maybe the Greeks got it right. The tragedy, tragic universe, the tragic cosmos that they envisioned made a lot of sense to me, given the depravity that we see in ourselves and in other people, and really in the environmental chaos that surrounds us. So, but it was short-lived, just because it was around the time I became 14, 15 is when I started to read the sacred scriptures and come to a new conclusion.
And how did you get your hands on the scriptures? What motivated you to want to read them?
Well, it actually came about because of a school project. This classical school was also a classical Christian school. My father was fine of that. They're people of the book, he said. But they had me start to read the New Testament. And at that same time, I had a deep conviction of my sin that was all-encompassing. And so I turned to the God of my father first and said, what can I do to make atonement for what I have done? And I saw that the answer was really do better, try harder. I could have moved to have more Muslim friends in a Muslim community, and that could have helped. But it seemed like it just wasn't taking my sin seriously enough. If I really grieved the God who created everything, then I'm going to try and reform and say a simple sorry. It wasn't good enough. And then I looked to the faith of my mother.
This awareness of your sin, did that come about through your teaching, the teaching of Islam? I'm imagining you were practicing the faith, that you were going to, mosque?
No, I never did, actually. It was with my father in the home. This was part of his liberalizing as he came to the States. And so I certainly studied the Quran, certainly read the Quran, certainly prayed from time to time, but nothing like going to mosque. It was really seeing my friends and I start to watch bad movies and and listen to bad music, and recognizing that this was obviously against both faiths. And it was this real awareness of my own sin that was the first trigger to make me think that, well, if I did something this bad, then there needs to be something that was done about it. And Islam did nothing about it, and Christianity did. Jesus died on the cross for our sins, taking our sins upon himself and giving us a path to heaven. That made sense all of a sudden.
Thank you for watching this clip. You can click here to watch the full episode. And I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors and to our amazing patrons for making all of this possible. Please do us a favor before you go. Click that subscribe button and then the bell. And that way YouTube will be forced to let you know every time we put out a new episode.